Hello, and welcome back to the Wells Family Journey. Today, we're going to read another chapter from the book, Ghost Among Us, written by Leslie Rule. If you haven't already, please subscribe, like, and ring that bell notification. Alright, let's get to it. Ghosts Among Us, written by Leslie Rule, Chapter 2, Playtime. Ask any baby boomer who grew up with TV about Talking Tina, and you are sure to see a shudder. The Twilight Zone was a program ahead of its time, with 30-minute tales of macabre twists on reality. Never mind that the eerie episodes were filmed in shades of gray and viewed on tiny TV screens. The ingenious plots, superb scripts, and exquisite directing and acting coaxed the imagination to life. The words of a wide-eyed doll are etched forever on the memories of millions of Twilight Zone's fans. My name is Talking Tina, and I am going to kill you. Long before Chucky, the movie doll who is possessed by a serial killer, the 1960s Talking Tina episode terrified American children. How many little girls banished a favorite doll for a place of honor on their beds to the bottom of the toy chest? Thank you, Rod Sterling. But toys don't really come to life. That's just pretend, right? Wrong. While I hope to never find a case of a murderous doll, my files are fat with cases of toys that seem to have minds of their own. These toys, of course, aren't really thinking, conscious beings. They are more likely simply objects that are haunted. Many of these toys have been exposed to dramatic human emotion and have soaked up this energy like a sponge soaking up spilled milk. In some cases, the toys may not be the source of a haunting, but are objects of interest to ghosts. Mama's Little Helper. Rhonda Lily stirred in her sleep as she awoke. The dark filled her eyes. It was 3 a.m. and she'd been snoozing soundly in the Oxnard, California rental home she shared with her husband and 2 daughters. What is that? She wondered, as she sat up and strained to make sense of an odd tinkling sound. Wake up, she nudged her husband. I hear something. He pulled the pillow over his head and ignored her. Rhonda got out of bed and headed down the hallway, past the rooms where her children slept as she moved toward the noise. The dust of her dreams had cleared. Alert now, she could identify the sound. It was her children's electronic toy, a ball that sings whenever it is played with. I knew my kids were asleep, said Rhonda. The ball makes noise only when it is touched. Yet Rhonda wasn't frightened. She opened the door to the playroom, flicked on the light, and saw the ball wiggling and singing in the middle of the room. A shrill siren sounded near her ear, and she turned to see a toy police car on the dresser. The little blue light atop its roof blinked as the car moved forward on the dresser. But before it reached the edge, it backed up and then moved forward again. It repeated the action, each time stopping before it reached the edge of the dresser. It was as if an invisible hand guided it, stopping it just before it crashed to the floor. You don't have to do this, Rhonda spoke calmly to the empty room. I know you are here. She turned off the toys and went back to bed. Rhonda does not believe the toys themselves were haunted. They were simply playthings for an ethereal little girl who shared their old white stucco house. While some people might have been disturbed by the 3 a.m. wake-up call, Rhonda took it in stride. In fact, she would not have had it any other way. I'd always be grateful to her, confided Rhonda, who first became aware her family was not alone one summer afternoon when she was in the bathroom. The door was open, and I glanced up just as a ball flew past. A second later, a little girl rushed by, chasing after it. "Hey!" Rhonda shouted. "Don't throw the ball in the house." She figured it was her daughter, but when she entered the hallway, it was quiet. "Angel!" she called out to her 4-year-old. When there was no answer, Rhonda went outside, where she found Angel happily splashing alone in a plastic wading pool. "But Mom," Angel protested as Rhonda reprimanded her, "I wasn't in the house." One day soon after Rhonda was doing housework, when she heard Angel chattering away in her bedroom as she were involved in an animated conversation. "Who were you talking to?" Rhonda later asked her daughter. "I was playing with the girl," Angel replied. Rhonda smiled. "At first, I thought she had an imaginary friend," she explained. But as Angel was so adamant, her mother found herself wondering, could she have met the ghost too? According to Angel, her friend was definitely not imaginary. Today, at 13, she vividly recalls her play session with a most unusual little girl 9 years before. "I looked into my room and saw her playing with my things," said Angel. "At first I was mad, and then I decided she'd be fun to play with." She stared for a moment at the strange figure. "She was glowing in blue," said Angel. She was a Hispanic girl about 6, with long hair that fell to her waist. Angel sat down beside the child who was clutching Angel's teddy bear. She kept staring at me. She looked kind of strange. She had squinty eyes as if she was crying. Her hair looked damp. Every once in a while she'd laugh, but she would not say a word. Though a bit apprehensive about her odd playmate, Angel was glad to have someone to play with. There were no other children in the neighborhood, and she was lonely. But I knew she wasn't like normal people, remembered Angel. When Angel tried to take her teddy bear back, the glowing girl clutched it tightly, refusing to give it up. The play session ended when the strange child tossed the teddy bear across the room. I went to get it, and when I looked back, she was gone. She saw the girl again a few days later when she awoke shivering from a sound sleep. It was so cold, it woke me up. I looked up, and there was the little girl staring down at me. It frightened me. She looked so sad. A year passed, and it was summertime once again when the ghost girl made another appearance. Angel was playing in the wading pool, and I stood at the kitchen sink, watching her as I did the dishes. Remember Rhonda? My 1-year-old Amanda was just out of sight of the window when I heard a voice in my head. It was more than a thought. It was as if someone was speaking to her, yet the voice did not ring in her ears. The warning was louder than any spoken word. "The baby is choking." In that instant, she saw the little ghost at the edge of her vision. She was about 6 with long brown hair, and she was wearing a white dress. Rhonda whirled around, and the girl vanished. She rushed outside to find Amanda sitting on the ground, her face red and her mouth filled with dirt. Frantically, Rhonda reached into the choking baby's mouth and pulled out a huge dirt clot. "She was okay," said the grateful mother. But a few more seconds had passed, she might not have been. All right. Ghost in the news. The haunted swing set. Ghostly kids playing rough? It seems some mischievous spirits are having a little too much fun with the kids at Pocatello Park. The Pocatello, which is located in Idaho, State Journal reported that Ammon Park was the site of an investigation of odd activity. The October 2003 article said the probe by the Ghost of Idaho, the GOI, team had prompted reports of paranormal experiences at that very park. One former Pocatello resident remembered a terrifying incident years earlier when she and a playmate entered a utility shed on a summer day. Though the children were alone in the park, the door slammed shut and was latched from the outside, locking them inside. The recent exploration of the park began because of a tip given to investigator Tracy Eastman. A witness told Eastman that when he was a boy in 1992, he was playing in the park with some friends. They were sitting beneath a pine tree when they heard a noise. The boys looked up to see a little girl in a blue dress seated on a swing. As the stunned boys watched her swing, she suddenly vanished. The boys silently jumped to their feet and took off running as ghostly giggling rang out behind them. In a recent experiment, Chris Elder of GOI set up a video camera and taped the swing set and discovered that one of the 4 swings was moving rapidly while the others were moving slowly. The investigators were unable to locate any documentation of a girl dying in the park and surmised that the giggling ghost girl may have once lived in the area and played at that very park. Rhonda's family has moved several times since they had lived in the Oxnard house, but the place has left a strong impression on them all. In addition to the little girl, my sister and I also saw an old Hispanic man in a big hat, said Rhonda. We often heard strange noises and the lights would turn themselves on and off. Amanda, the baby saved from choking, also remembered an experience in the home. 10 years old now, Amanda recalled the night she woke to see a little girl curled up sleeping on the floor beside her bed. I thought it was Angel, she said, but Angel was asleep in the bed. Perhaps it was the same little spirit who had once saved her life. Perhaps she was still watching over her. Who were the ghostly people who shared the Lily's home? They may have been field workers, ventured Rhonda. Before the house was built, there was a farm there. Why was the little girl so sad? Why was she seen in the summertime? Twice she showed up while Angel played in the waiting room. Angel remembered that the ghost girl had wet hair. Was the ghost a child drowning victim? Though these questions remain unanswered, one thing is certain. The spirit girl meant no harm. She saved Amanda's life, said Rhonda. For that, we will always be thankful. Bakery Boy. Author Troy Taylor leased an old building in Alton, Illinois, and found it perfect for his bookstore. Troy is in the ghost business. He's written over a dozen books on hauntings, and he runs Alton's History and Hauntings ghost tours. The 1857 building, with its creaky wood floors and spacious rooms, was exactly what he had in mind. But when the owners told him the building was haunted, he secretly scoffed. It was too perfect, he said. The building is haunted by a little boy whose father worked here years ago when it was a bakery, Troy was told. The declaration smacked of a salesman line, custom fit for him. He and his wife Amy brushed the story aside and got to work setting up their business. We forgot all about it, admitted Troy. Before long, employees began reporting odd things. They heard whispering and footsteps, after the store closed, he explained. One afternoon as Troy worked in the store, he was at the counter engrossed in paperwork when he felt one of my children tug on the back of my sweatshirt. It was several sharp tugs. I turned to see what my child wanted and was startled to realize that no one was there. In fact, Troy was all alone in the shop. The paranormal activity escalated in the following months. Objects inexplicably vanished, only to pop up in unexpected places days later. Then he followed us home, said Troy. When Amy and Troy welcomed their new baby girl, Maggie, everyone was enchanted with the dimpled red-haired child, everyone including the unseen presence. The most chilling incident occurred when Maggie was about 3 months old, Troy remembered. She was in her crib asleep and started to cry around 2 a.m. The alert parents heard the crying via the baby monitor and had jumped out of bed when they heard another sound, the faint tinkle of music. Concerned, they rushed to check out their child. She was lying quietly, watching the mobile above her crib going around, playing music as it turned. Troy shook his head, bemused by the occurrence. The infant, of course, was too tiny to have activated the mobile. Someone had actually wound it up completely in order for it to have started playing, explained Troy. It had not been triggered on its own because we had never used it. As the baby got bigger, she was able to sit by herself in the living room and play. We noticed an interesting phenomenon. Toys vanished and operated by themselves. The enigmatic presence seemed to have his favorite toys. These would vanish regularly. We'd leave toys on the rug when we took the baby to the next room to eat dinner. And when we returned, they'd be gone. They always came back later, often a day or two, and always appeared in the spots we had already searched. We've had an ongoing problem with toys that turn themselves on. It happens at all hours of the day and night. One evening as Troy watched television, he noticed Molly, his big orange cat, staring at one of the baby toys. It is a tall pole with a circle on top of that plastic balls can be placed inside of. When the ball is pushed down into a slot, music plays, and the ball whirls around and shoots out the bottom. Molly crouched, her pupils huge, as if watching an invisible prey. I suddenly heard music and the whirring of a ball, Troy exclaimed. Molly's fur stood up and she dashed to the other room. I was startled too, said Troy. Someone would have to pick up the ball and place it in the opening to start it working. I didn't do it. The cat couldn't do it. It had to be our little resident ghost. Today, Troy puts more credence in the stories of the child who once spent his days in the building. They say when it was a bakery, the boy's father worked there, Troy said, explaining that the boy accompanied his baker dad to work early in the mornings. As the sweet, heavy scent of baking bread wafted through the shop, the child would play or sleep on a cot in the back of the shop. The boy died young, but his spirit never left the premises until he was enticed by a beautiful baby girl. Tess, the Haunted Doll. Kelly Weaver of Camp Hill, Pennsylvania, did not know why she purchased the odd doll at a yard sale. I am not a doll person, insists the aspiring writer. There was something about her face that kept drawing me to her. I couldn't put her down. So she plunked down the dollar for the small plastic doll and took her home. She was dressed in Russian garb. She wore an orange and brown floral skirt, which I thought was ugly. Her arms were folded across her chest. The blonde, rosy-cheeked doll smiled prettily, and Kelly found herself talking to her as she climbed into the car beside her husband. John. Even as she did so, Kelly laughed at herself. "Can you believe it?" she said to John. "I'm too old to play with dolls. And here I am, talking to one." He smiled patiently. "You're never too old for dolls. Just enjoy it," he replied. Kelly, who has always had a strong sixth sense, confided, "In my mind, I heard the doll tell me her name was Tess." Imagination or psychic impression. It didn't matter. From that moment on, the doll was Tess. The next day, Kelly set up her computer on a picnic table and began writing a novel. She propped Tess beside the computer for inspiration. Inspire her, she did. The words flowed, and I liked what I wrote. Whenever I touched her, I felt surges of energy. Kelly named a character after the charismatic doll. Her friends, too, noticed Tess and had an aliveness about her foreign to an inanimate object. "Her eyes seemed to follow you," said Kelly. An antiques dealer friend informed her that Tess was an old-fashioned tea cozy. Her skirt was designed to cover a teapot. This struck Kelly as odd because she had just rewritten a chapter after being inexplicably compelled to add a tea party scene. All of this, of course, could be nothing more than imagination and coincidence. Yet, who can explain what happened next? I was rereading my work to John while he was lying in bed. He asked me where Tess was. I pointed to the top of the television, which is set up high atop the trunk. John fell asleep, but Kelly was restless, so she went to another room to read. When she was finally sleepy, she crawled into bed. She snuggled into the pillow, only to see familiar eyes staring back at her. Tess. The doll was on the pillow beside her, yet Kelly had not placed her there. How did she get there? John was bewildered by the occurrence. When I awoke Kelly, I asked her why she was sleeping with the doll. She said she had not put her there. Could the dog, Teddy, have retrieved the doll and tucked it into the bed beside me? John shook his head. I am fundamentally a skeptic. I try to explore every rational explanation for something strange before I accept it as being paranormal or supernatural. Any attempt by Teddy to fetch the doll would have caused a major commotion. He said, explaining that 2 stacks of boxes flanked the trunk and the TV where Tess rested. It would have been physically impossible for Teddy to climb up and retrieve the doll without knocking down a large number of items. Everything was intact. John, still searching for a logical explanation, asked, Could Kelly, in a sleepwalking state, have done it unconsciously? He dismissed the idea as soon as he raised it. I've never known her to sleepwalk, and there is nothing to suggest she does. The Tess incident paints a spooky picture. Imagine the little doll, her skirt swishing as she hops down from her high place and skitters across the room. Or did she float through the air as an unseen hands carried her? Perhaps she had vanished from atop the TV and promptly materialized beside Kelly. If the dog witnessed this, he's definitely not talking. Clowning around. When Renee walked into her spare room to pick up a basket of dirty laundry, she gasped. Her clown doll was propped up in front of the basket, staring at her with his wide brown eyes. He'd been in the corner for several months, said the Beaverton, Oregon real estate agent. I hadn't moved him. She quizzed her boyfriend Mark and her 17-year-old daughter. Neither of them had moved the doll. She was a little spooked, but not surprised. She had in fact gotten exactly what she shopped for, a haunted clown doll. She had been surfing the internet, reading ghost stories, when she entered the word haunted into the search. An eBay auction came up, said Renee. It was about to end in 4 minutes. Those with computers hooked to the internet can access eBay, an online auction site where people can bid on or sell everything from Avon bottles to automobiles. The bidding was in the hundreds for the clown doll with a big rubber head, round nose, and straw-stuffed body. The main selling point? It was haunted. The doll seller claimed, moved on its own. Renee, who asked that her last name be left out of this story, has always been interested in ghosts. I grew up in Walla Walla, Washington, she said. My friends lived in an 1800s house that was haunted, and I used to spend the night there. We would hear chains rattling and a woman screaming at night. So began her fascination with the other side. As she stared at the photograph of the unusual-looking doll with the mysterious habits, she made a decision. On a whim, Renee entered a bid. Moments later, she received an email telling her that she had won. For about $500, the doll was hers. Suddenly, she felt nervous. I didn't want it to come to my house, she confided. So I went and got a post office box and had the seller mail it to me there. Once she opened the package, the doll seemed innocent enough, so she brought him home. He looked to be many decades old, but there were no dates or other markings on him. His clothing was a 1960s vintage, but Renee could not tell if it was his original attire. Renamed him Vincent Hitchcock, she said, explaining that he was named after 2 eerie cinema icons, monster movie actor Vincent Price and suspense film director Alfred Hitchcock. She corresponded with the seller, who told her that he was a doll sculptor and that he too had purchased a clown doll on eBay. He, however, had no idea the doll came with a ghost. He simply wanted it because it had such an interesting face, but he soon began to notice that the clown mysteriously vanished from the places he left him, only to show up in unexpected spots. He contacted the previous owner, said Renee. He asked him if there was something unusual about the doll. The guy told him, yeah, he moves. That man's wife made him put the clown in the shed. Renee, however, has a place of honor in her home for Vincent. She also has a website on ghosts with a section devoted to Vincent's activities. Since he has shared her home, he has inexplicably moved several times. Once they found him with his arms up in the air. Renee has also experimented with electronic voice phenomena, EVP, the practice of leaving a tape recorder running in an empty room in the hope of capturing spirit voices on tape. Left beside Vincent, the recorder has gotten several phrases spoken in the gravely voice of a man, which can be heard on her website. In the clearest recording, the voice yells, "Wake up!" After capturing the phrase, Renee played the recording for her daughter, who turned white. She said she heard the voice in the night, and it had woken her up. Where in the world did Vincent come from? He may have been homemade, perhaps a poor child for a poor child. Renee thinks with a rubber head purchased from a craft store. All who meet Vincent agree that there is a childlike aura about him. If a spirit indeed is attached to the clown, it may be a child or someone with childlike energy. Despite Renee's research into Vincent's life, his past and the ghosts that came with him remain a mystery. the world's most famous haunted toy store. Sunnyvale, California holds a place on the map as the location of the most famous haunted toy store in the world. Shoppers and employees alike have reported experiencing paranormal activity there. Witnesses have seen toys hop off shelves, spotted apparitions, and heard a voice calling Elizabeth. The store's restrooms are a hotspot of activity, where some say the faucets turn themselves off and toilets flush by themselves. A famous psychic claims that the ghost of a man named Johnny was chopping wood and accidentally cut himself on the spot years ago, before the store was built. He supposedly bled to death, and his ghost remains today. Thank you for staying with me in the reading of Ghost Among Us, Chapter 2, Playtime. Chapter 3 will be coming shortly. If you enjoy my reading of Ghost Among Us, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and also the bell notification for more videos. Next chapter is called Chapter 3, Haunted Amusement Parks. Thank you, and I hope to see you again on the next video of Ghost Among Us, Chapter 3, Haunted Amusement Parks.